Thank you very much for joining me for this session of Dr. Plotzker's Mind. I got to look down on America, quite literally, though anything but figuratively. My transcontinental travel came in 4 separate flights. First one from the northeast to the south, then from the south to my destination on the west coast, and return about a week later from the place I was staying through Chicago back home. So I got to see America in its southern dimension and in its northern dimension, nearly all of it in the daylight. With the quirks of airline seating, I obtained a window seat for each of the 4 legs, and the weather remained pretty cooperative, with cloud cover limited to perhaps uh, the eastern Rockies heading west, and uh, the Dakotas or thereabouts, maybe Nebraska heading east. I'm familiar with maps, I'm familiar with the geography, but I've traveled on land through very little of it. Going from north to south in the wee hours of daylight, I could see a little bit, but not much to impress me. That completely changed going from the southeast uh, America all the way to the west coast. Alabama had farms. Mississippi had farms. They had other structures. Uh, that flight also included a digital map on a screen in front of my seat so I could tell where I was. The plane flew over Oklahoma, which also had thriving farmland. It went over the Texas Panhandle and the Oklahoma Panhandle. Eventually, we reached hills where the land became a bit more barren, and eventually mountainous. The flight turned north a little bit, continuing through the Rockies, which had cloud cover that then cleared. I could see the Sierra Nevadas. I could see many of the features of Utah, those red earth uh, formations, some mountains, irregular landscape, followed by the Great Basin of Nevada, the Sierra Mountains. After crossing them, California had farmland all the way to the emergence of my city. On the way back, clear skies, leaving at mid-morning. Um, this time the plane did not have a simultaneous map, so I had to guess where I was. Nevada was easy to pick out, deserts, and then more mountains, which I assume was Colorado, uh, barren land, but within the barren land, some farm emerged. I can't think of why anybody would want to farm in such a remote area, but I could see the irrigation circles. And then as the plane headed east, a mixture of irrigation circles and rectangular fields. I could not tell what was growing from 5 miles above the surface. The plane continued eastward through what looked like badlands. That must have been the Dakotas or maybe part of Nebraska. Then cloud cover until the more classical Midwest. Immense formations of commercial agriculture, mostly rectangular, all the way to the descent into Chicago. The farms came pretty close to the city. For the remainder of the trip, I flew into twilight, but I could see farmland in Michigan, some of the Great Lakes with a beach, partly Lake Michigan, partly Lake Erie going into Ohio, and then into Pennsylvania, which at that time of the night was illuminated. What I saw was a very productive America, uh, people building cities. Even at the city I stayed at, a very contentious place in American politics, uh, one with a big immigrant Spanish speaking population. The people I met were committed to being good Americans. I saw little shops uh, near where I was staying, not the big box stores. The people there were likely subject to uh, immigration roundup, but I don't really know. What I do know is that the people who run those bodegas and ethnic restaurants were invariably very nice to me. I had occasion to go to the ER as somebody who I was visiting took ill. State of the art facilities, efficient. Um, their waiting area had 4 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. I did not expect Russian, but apparently they have a Russian speaking population there. It was a good America. People working, people producing, people uh, taking care of you when you were sick. The city I stayed at, for all its adverse publicity, was mostly clean. It was safe. It doesn't need federal troops, though federal troops were threatened. People could live quite nicely there. And from what I saw from the air, they could live pretty nicely and perhaps with a little better harmony than what I read about pretty much every place else that I flew over. Thanks so much for sharing this session of Dr. Plotzker's Mind.